Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Reality Vibes, where facts speak louder than feelings, and we don't apologize for common sense. Today, I want to talk about the case of Fiji, this tiny island nation caught between rising tides, rising tensions, and rising global interference. But I am not coming at this from a liberal or idealist perspective. I'm speaking as an anthropologically trained development worker. Realistic, pro-life, American first. And while I understand the complexities of globalization, I also know that not everything labeled climate crisis is what it seems. Let's take a walk through this together with our feet firmly on the ground and our heads clear. Now, before we get into climate and social impacts, let's rewind a little, because understanding Fiji today means understanding where it came from. This story begins at least 3,500 years ago, when the first settlers, Austronesian-speaking Lapita people, arrived by canoe from Melanesia. They brought pigs, pottery, farming know-how, and built small communities along ridges and river valleys. Over time, those communities evolved into a network of competing chiefdoms, often allied, often at war. Traditional Fijian society was hierarchical, based on clans, called matakali, and power was a combination of lineage and merit. Warfare, ritual cannibalism, and ancestor worship were a normal part of life. Then came the outsiders. Dutch explorer Abel Tasman passed by in 1643. James Cook followed in 1774, but the real disruption began in the 1800s with the arrival of missionaries, sandalwood traders, beachcombers, and finally the colonial powers. One name stands out: Kakobau, the powerful chief of Bau. He converted to Christianity in 1854, not because he was brainwashed, but because he saw the political and military advantage of aligning with the British. By the 1870s, the whole country was a powder keg of competing interests. In 1874, Fiji became a British colony by formal cession. That ushered in a new era, an economy built on sugar, fueled by indentured Indian labor. Over the next century, deep ethnic divisions grew between indigenous Fijians and Indo-Fijians, creating the foundation for future conflict. Fast forward, Fiji gained independence in 1970 and operated as a multiracial democracy. Briefly, in 1887, after an Indo-Fijian-led coalition won elections, the military stepped in. 2 coups later, democracy was dead. From there, we saw decades of instability. The 2000 coup, the 2006 coup, and the long authoritarian rule of Frank Bainimarama. That so-called transitional period only ended in 2022. So if anyone tries to paint Fiji as a neutral victim of globalization, they are not telling you the full story. This is a nation whose history includes tribal warlords, colonial manipulation, Cold War era socialist flirtations, and modern day authoritarianism. And yes, flirtations with socialism. Abisai Tora, a former union leader, later called himself the Fidel Castro of the Pacific. He met Castro in 1974 while attending a Soviet-sponsored trade union conference. His cigar and red cap weren't just accessories. They symbolized Fiji's openness to alliances with regimes like Cuba, China, or whoever will throw them a rope. Desperate nations often try to stay in grace with both God, and the devil. That's how you end up welcoming Cuban doctor missions that prop up the Cuban regime economically by renting their slave labor, while shaking hands with Beijing for infrastructure and loans that come with strings attached. Now, let's address the environmental side. Is sea level rise real? Yes, it is. Satellite data shows that sea levels around Fiji are rising at about 6 millimeters per year, slightly above the global average. But let's not go off the deep end. That's roughly 6 centimeters per decade, not 6 feet. Even in the worst case climate models, global sea levels are projected to rise about 1 to 3 feet by the year 2100. That's serious, but manageable with proper planning. And even if every inch of polar ice in Greenland and Antarctica melted, a process that will take thousands of years, we will see a maximum sea level rise of around 70 meters. That's not something Fiji or anyone else is facing in our lifetimes. What is impacting Fiji right now is more immediate: coastal erosion, stronger and more frequent cyclones, unpredictable rainfall, and contamination of freshwater aquifers. This disrupt agriculture, destroy homes, and threaten food and water security. But let's not forget, Fiji isn't flat. Its highest peak, Mount Tomanivi, reaches over 1,300 meters. The land is there. What's missing is forward-thinking infrastructure, clear and evacuation planning, logistics to move people inland in a humane way, and investment in sustainable inland development. The answer is not panic, it's preparation. Now, how does that all this tie into social relations? Well, the truth is that change always brings friction. In some coastal communities today, environmental disruption is displacing the traditional livelihoods of Fijian men, especially fishing and subsistence farming. With rising saltwater intrusion and erratic rainfall, entire villages are struggling to maintain crop yields and fish stocks. And as the roles men once dominated become unstable or irrelevant, many women are stepping into leadership roles, especially in economic planning, food security, and local crisis response. In some places, they have organized community gardens, coordinated with NGOs, and even led climate adaptation workshops. That's real leadership, but it also shifts traditional gender dynamics. And yes, that creates tension. What we are witnessing here isn't just disruption, it's ethnogenesis in real time. The remaking of identity as Fijians adapt to climate stress, global aid systems, and changing roles within their own communities. Some observers have tried to blame that tension on Christianity, implying that imported religion somehow undermines local gender equality. But let's be clear, that's a shallow reading of the situation. Christianity has been deeply rooted in Fijian society for over 170 years, and it wasn't imposed through brute force at all. It was embraced voluntarily by chiefs who saw the benefits of peace, order, and long term alliances. Most of the most pivotal conversions happened in 1854 when Ratu Seru Epenisa Kakubau, the powerful chief of Bau, accepted Christianity under the influence of Methodist missionaries like the Reverend James Culver and Thomas Baker. Kakubau was not a puppet. He had been a fierce warlord, once called the King of Cannibals, and had long resisted missionary influence until he saw that Christianity could bring stability to his fractured kingdom and reduce endless cycles of warfare and vengeance. At that time, Fiji was known for intertribal warfare and, yes, ritual cannibalism. The most infamous example involved the death of Reverend Thomas Baker, who was killed and reportedly eaten in 1876 in Nabutatau village after a cultural misunderstanding escalated into violence. That was the reality before Christianity became widespread, a society ruled by the spear and the club, not the pen of the war. Chiefs like Kakubau were naive. They saw the church as a path to diplomacy, literacy, and international recognition. His baptism and alliance with the missionaries were political acts as much as spiritual ones. By 1874, when Kakubau and other chiefs ceded Fiji to Britain, Christianity was already woven into the moral and social fabric of the nation. So when academics today suggest that Christianity is the source of gender inequality in Fiji, they are ignoring that it was Christianity that helped end tribal violence, established modern education, and provided the framework for national unity. The current gender tensions aren't because of religions. They are the result of economic instability, migration, climate pressure, and the evolution of social roles in a time of crisis. It's reductionist and frankly unfair to pin complex social transformations on a faith tradition that many Fijians continue to embrace as part of their identity. So now the question is, what can be done? If I were there as an anthropologically trained development worker, one who respects both human rights and religious identity, here's what I would propose. First, relocating with dignity. Map out the most at-risk villages. Don't wait for the next flood to wipe them out. Preemptively build inland housing, affordable, modular, scalable, accessible, and connected to clean water and roads. Not utopian eco-villages. Use satellite data, not tribal politics, to guide resettlement zones. Second, economic diversification. Fiji cannot continue to bet everything on tourism and sugar, two fragile pillars that collapse the moment borders close or global prices shift. The COVID-19 pandemic proved just how exposed the Fijian economy is to global shocks. Instead, it is time to look inward and outward. Start with agriculture. Salt-resistant crops like cassava, sweet potatoes, and millet can thrive even as coastal salinity increases. Build resilient local trade hubs where farmers, fishers, and artisans can sell directly to regional markets without middlemen draining their profits. And perhaps most importantly, embrace the power of digital services. Fiji already enjoys a strong internet connectivity thanks to undersea fiber optic cables like the Southern Cross cable and high mobile penetration. So why not leverage that? Invest in remote work skills, data entry, coding, content moderation, tech support, and online tutoring. English is already the language of education and business in Fiji. That's a global advantage. Just look at what India, the Philippines, and even small Eastern European nations have done, providing remote services to the rest of the world without needing a single export crate or factory. These jobs require minimal physical infrastructure, only training, laptops, and reliable internet. If Fiji can train its youth not just to consume digital tools, but to produce value with them, the whole nation can tap into the global economy from their living rooms. That's sovereignty through innovation, not dependency through handouts. Third, stop doing businesses with dictatorships. Selling out national dignity for a few Chinese built bridges or Cuban stethoscopes is not a development strategy, it's complicity. Those so called Cuban medical missions are not acts of goodwill, they are a modern form of slavery. Multiple human rights organizations, including over 1,100 former participants who filed complaints with the United Nations and the International Criminal Court in 2021, have exposed how these are subjected to forced labor, travel restrictions, surveillance by minders, and threats of punishments, including imprisonment or separation from their children if they defect or speak out. The Cuban regime routinely confiscates up to 75 or 90% of their earnings while pocketing payments from host countries. Paying for these services isn't supporting healthcare, it is funding a dictatorship. If Fiji or any other nation wants real partnerships, they should align with democratic allies like Australia, Japan, and the United States, nations that offer aid tied to transparency, sovereignty, and accountability, not domination through manipulation. Fourth, let's talk about priorities, guys. If Fiji is truly facing an existential climate crisis, if entire villages are sinking, fresh water is disappearing, and the economy is collapsing, then it is fair to ask, why does a country of over 930,000 people still fund a military force of around 3,500 active troops, supported by an estimated 1,500 reserves? That means nearly one out of every 180 citizens is a soldier. Compare that to New Zealand, where a population 5 times larger by only about 9,000 active personnel. Fiji's military budget is modest by global standard, estimated around 7 million United States dollar annually. But in local terms, that's a huge chunk of resources in a struggling economy where many rural communities lack clean water, proper roads, or storm resilient housing. Let's be blunt. This isn't about defense, it's about domestic power. That same military has led 4 coups since 1987, sidelined elected governments, and ruled the country outright for years. If Fiji is serious about survival, maybe it's time to trade some barracks for bulldozers, build inland roads instead of armored trucks, train engineers instead of insurgents, redirect the budget from uniforms to utilities. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Fifth, protect religious and cultural heritage. Don't tear it down in the name of progress. Incorporate Christian values and traditions into educational programs, into public health, into community planning. That's not regression, that is respect. Lastly, treat Fijians as decision makers, not victims. They don't need us to save them. They need realistic partnerships based on mutual respect, honest data, and real deliverables. If we truly believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that belief must extend beyond borders, but without abandoning truth or dignity or common sense. So, no, Fiji isn't a blank slate where we can test social theories. It is a real nation with real problems and real people who deserve better than ideological slogans or utopian blueprints. If we want to help, let's do so with humility, with clarity, and with backbone. And this is all for today, everyone. You have been watching Reality Vibes, where facts speak louder than feelings. Take care of yourself, stay sharp, stay free, and above all, stay real. Thanks for watching, and good night.